So the pitching process, it's nerve wracking, but at the same time, you kind of just let the pressure wash over you and realize there's work to be done.
And like checking out, bids and awards, and then seeing the expenses, and then imagining the worst case scenario, and then really trying to figure out, okay, do I really need these things? Do I need, it's really about your expenses.
Hi, in this video, I will be interviewing Nico and Katwo. They are the owners of Rezonate. Rezonate is the elite crusaders of awe and wonder based in New York City and in Manila. I've actually had the chance in working with them in the past, and they're amazing. They're super talented and hardworking. They've worked with tons of amazing projects. And in this video, we'll be talking about how they started and what's the design scene look like in New York. I believe you're going to get a lot of value listening to them. So let's get to it.
My first question is, what is the origin story for Resonate? I think most of the viewers don't know what Flux is, so I think we could go even beyond that. How did you start Flux? How did it become Resonate? And how did it become what it is today?
Okay, do you want to take that, or do you want me to take it?
No, you take that.
Okay, so so basically we started out in roughly 2006. We were called 2720 during that time. And this is the same time when Team Manila was starting up, Electrolyte, Collision Theory, and Ink Surge. So it was around that time, 2006, 2005, 2006. And the number came from the age that when Katu and I met. So I was 27, she was 20. So we're like, oh, okay, let's just make it 27 with a plus and then put 20. And then after that, later on, we started to get some work. We started becoming more of a studio, and then we finally, just like with everyone else that were with us, like Sila TM, Ganon, we finally got ourselves all registered, kind of like all the same time. I think Sila Brew from Electrolyte, I think, was the first one.
Yeah, because we use their lawyer.
That's right.
So it was like that. The community was very much like, here's my lawyer, here's my accountant, use them. Like, okay, but there's a lot of like sharing information.
Yeah,
And
and I always like to bring this story up because I really feel like one of the, at least from my experience, I really felt like the start of, like, the industry per se really was like this event called Versus, and that was started by Paul Guadacomenda, who used to be part of TM, and it was basically a bunch of us, so like our studios or our groups would collaborate with a musician or a band. They would create their own original song, and we would battle. So it'll be like we'll take an artist or a song, and then we will take an original song and then put visuals on it. And then we did a openings sagiho. So the bands would play the music originally downstairs, and then upstairs will be the art gallery showing all the artworks that are based on the songs being played downstairs. So that was called Versus. And then the second Versus, that was so, I think, it really took off. And the second one we did, that's when like Dan Matatina came in, Inadoro came in, um, a bunch of others. Oh, see, andun ba si ano? Shoot, what was his name? Leroy, I think, was in there in the
I
second
know,
one.
I think he was like the second wave.
Yeah,
Like
second wave.
2010, 2011
Okay,
yan
okay,
sila.
yeah, yeah.
I think.
So from there, so we kept the name 2720. We kept going, and then at some point, we were actually debating on closing shop and then just moving to the United States, specifically back to New York, and that was around 2011.
11.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Oh no, 2010. And then while we were doing that, actually we closed. Actually, we did close. We let everyone go, and then we told all of our clients we were leaving. And then a couple of weeks later, someone called and saying they were interested to partner up with us. Long story short, we decided to reopen again. We have new partners coming in, and then rather than just kind of bringing 2720s, we want to bring something new. So we decided to rename it into Flux Design Labs. Then that's from like 2011 up to 2014, I
Mm-hmm.
think. And then around 2014, that's when the partnership broke up. We decided to part ways, and then and at this time, Katu and I already relocated to New York, but we kept the
Mm.
office in Manila, and then we decided to rebrand into Resonate, and which is what you see currently.
Mm. So when you say go back to New York, so both of you are originally based in New York before you go here in
Um,
Manila.
no. See, Katu, yeah, homegrown from QC. I it's funny because we actually we're neighbors in QC, but we're 7 years
Mm.
apart. So when I left, no, QC, um, she was like five houses down away from us, but she was only like mga 2 years old when I left,
Mm.
about 1.5 or something. So I didn't really know her, but I moved here in New York around 85. So I've been here ever since. And then I moved back to the Philippines for a wedding, and that's when I met Katu in around 2003. And then I'm staying. So I stayed. So I relocated to the Philippines and lived there for 10 years,
Mm.
starting 2004.
Okay. That's
So that's our story.
yeah. I first time I heard that.
Oh yeah, yeah. I decided
Okay.
to. It's funny, because I was just discussing this with someone, and it's like one of those moments where it's like a movie. Like you're kind of put in a position where, and this is when I was working like in a really good studio here, and it was like the question of, do you go for this other thing or do you go for your career? It was like that kind of a thing happening,
Mm.
and then I said, a career or work you can always find.
Mm.
That's. I mean, it's not that it's easy, but you can always find it. But I think finding someone that you want to be with is not as easy to find. So
Mm.
if you find it, you want to keep it and and grow with it. So that's what I did.
Good advice. So we're also getting we're also getting love advice here. So my next question is I don't also fully understand the concept of Nathan Love. So you're a director of in Nathan Love. So can you tell us about what's Nathan Love and how did you end up being one of the directors there?
so Katu and I are directing for them. They actually rep us here in New York City. Joe, who owns Nathan, he and I went to school together. We also worked together in the same studio a long time ago before I left. But before we moved here, we were actually doing. I called him up when I was still in Manila, and I said, "Hey, I have a studio here. Maybe there's something we can do to work together." And then we tried it before, and this is like back in maybe 2008, where they asked us, to help them in a pitch to create some style frames for them, and then we did that, and then we didn't win, but then that offered, another project that maybe we could bid for,
Mm.
and then that became the show called Inside Man, that we were working on, and they really liked us. And what happened was basically it was they were working. They were like the producers. They were doing it for another company. And then I think things were going so well. They said, you know what? Why don't you just guys take the whole project for the second season? Do you want to just take it? So it won't be part of Nathan Love anymore. It'll just be straight to you guys. Um, so Joe and I kept in touch. And then when I was coming back, I told him, hey, I want to. I'm thinking of heading back there. Let's meet. And then
Mm.
basically he offered, hey, do you guys want to like rent a space here in the office? Because we were looking for office space. We were thinking of going to WeWork or something. And then he was like, yeah, just if you want to rent a desk, that's great. And Katuna are like, okay, instead of going out, all right, here we are. And when we visited New York around 2008, I already met some of the crew in the office, so we kind of knew each other already. So it was kind of natural to just kind of fit in. Um, and then after that, basically, we're doing work, and he saw the work that we were doing, and he was just like, "Hey, do you guys let's find a way to work together." So that's kind of how it started.
Mm. So how does it work? So if you get a project, is it credited to Resonate or to Nathan Love, or I mean, how does that exactly work?
Sure. So it's no different, I think, when let's say a long time ago, I think when people in people who are repped in black market, which is part of PSYOP, would work. It'd still be
Mm.
under PSYOP's name. So we are credited as Nico and Katwo as being the directors for the work, and for the credits, the actual artists are also put in there, and
Mm.
then we also put in Rezonate as the other company, and then here's the artist that's underneath it. Or sometimes it's just the names of the artists that we have in house. That's part of the credit list. So that's kind of how it works. If they're the ones like who are getting the work, it would be under them. So
Mm.
it'd be like produced by NathanLove, and then directors Nico and Katwo, and then we'll have our crew, whoever worked on it, whether it's our freelancers here in New York or our staff in Manila.
Mm. Okay. Another thing I also don't have a fully grasp on and would really be interested for you to share is, I mean, how does the motion design world work? I mean, how do you get to pitch to a project? How do you get to bid on stuff? Because me, I'm self-taught, and I tried to learn it on my own, so I don't
Mhm.
exactly know how it works for you guys. So I think that's very interesting to talk about too.
Well, I'm curious. How do you guys do it?
For us, so we have a website. Clients would go to the website and would basically ask an explainer video, and then we would have, I mean, the first call, and then try to figure if both of us fit, and if we do, I'm going to prepare a proposal, and then if they like the proposal, then they hire us, and I mean that's basically it.
That's nothing different. I think where things that's exactly how it works here.
Mm,
And that's all, I guess if you talk about sales talk, that's kind of inbound sales, right? Because you're not reaching out
mm,
for them. They kind of
mm,
found you and then they said, "Oh, you guys look interesting. Let me call you guys and find out more."
mm,
So we also get that. That's also done here. But I think the big difference with and that's a direct client. But if you work with an agency, it's a little different.
mm,
I think that's where the differences come in. My experiences in the Philippines with the same type of work, right? You have an agency, let's say whether it's BBDO, JWT,
mm,
um, they would call us. In this case, it would be uh, Nathan Love, for example, because we are under their roster, and basically they would have a storyboard and they would have a bid. So same thing. So they already have something, right? They already have a client and they have storyboards. So same thing in Manila, right? They call you up, they want a visibility to get some costs. They call you guys and it's like, here's an agency board. I think the big one of the big differences is over here, a lot of the animation studios have directors
mm,
and they know, and pretty much who you sell are like the directors of that studio. um, and they would want to have like the directors, in other words, the studio's treatment. So, like for example, like I think for Buck, right, it's like directed by Buck, and they have different directors. They have an art director, a creative director who come in, and a technical director who really work together. So that's why it's all directed by Buck versus like a specific name.
mm,
Um, so whereas from my experience in Manila, it's like they go to production houses who are really
mm,
experts in shoots. And there's a director that's in there, either a freelance director or an in-house director, and then they're bidding an animation gig. And then those production studios they'll look and scramble for like, animation houses, like either you guys or us. And then that external director will try to create something that's animated with that team to create it. Where here, it's really like there's this process where we help the agencies with the storyboard and the story as a director. And then from there, it's like we just do the process of updating and changing the storyboards to like style frames to what we call design frames, which is basically the whole storyboard, but all designed and
mm,
finished. And then from there, once that's locked, we just animate. And of course, there's VO work and then there's music, etc. But meaning that our production pipeline is basically we get the bid, which has a board, if not no boards, just a script.
mm,
Then we would design the storyboard and sometimes work with them with the script if it makes sense or whatnot. Then from there, rough sketches that gets presented to the client approves it. Um, and once that's approved, then we turn all those into style frames. And then so they can see what it really is supposed to look like. Then once that's approved, then we go into animation. So unlike in the Philippines, where if you did this, there would be a process of a feasibility, which is a very specific meeting to see if it's even feasible by doing this. If we work with this studio, we do it with this technique. Do we do 3D? Do we do 2D? So there's a feasibility meeting, and then you have a PPM, which is your pre-production meeting with the client. Even if it's animation, and you describe, the agency board gets explained, and then the director's board gets explained. And if you know, so there's the big difference, right? Over here,
Mm.
the only time we do a PPM if our animation has a shoot involved. But if there isn't, if there's no shoot involved, like no talent, no product that you have to shoot, then it's just really this process of the storyboard process until it becomes solidly like style framed, and then animation. So there's no PPM in between. It's just a matter of agreeing whether the storyboard makes sense and whether designs are locked. So that's like the main difference. But in terms of, like you just said, in terms of like those inbound sales of like someone seeing your website, calling you, that also happens
Mm.
here. We have a few of those direct clients where they see our work. Either they came to us from our website, or they heard about us in some magazine, and then they would call and say, hey, we're this, and we have this thing that we want to do. We're wondering if we can talk to you. So
Mm.
similar. That's direct client, right? Not there's no agency in between.
Mm. And um, I mean, how does a pitch also work? So I've heard in some other studios that sometimes it's the pitching game. So you have to pitch first your idea before you get hired. We didn't really experience that over the past 8 years, and I'm curious to know. I mean, what's that like? And I've also heard you that in the past you also um, were in the same room with big studios. So I mean, curious to know what is that like competing with them?
Definitely, it's a challenge. The pitches are very challenging. I think, especially when you realize, like, you're up against like brand new school, you're up against Buck,
Mm.
um, and sometimes you're also up, there's so many other studios out there besides those guys, but they're all like top notch, and you just have to bring your A game, really. It really depends on what you put on the table. Sometimes they just want to see really, really good 3D or how fast it could be done. Another different thing is the pitching process. So our experience here so far is all of our pitches is basically we make a deck, right? We have the storyboard, we have the style
Mm.
frames. We send it to the agency, and then we walk them through it over the phone. It's not even video. It's like just over the phone.
Mm. Okay.
Um, and so that means like you have to say, okay, make sure are you on page 2? And you have to describe it, right? Because you're both, like, you're not in the same room.
Mm.
So we've been doing that a lot. No, like
Yep.
we can't.
Yep. I mean, I think for most of the time, the pitch process happens because of the sales process involved in it. Because we're rep, I think there is already parang from intent to award mabilis. Like, okay, they know there's a client, there's an agency looking for a specific spot. The the industry in New York kasi is so wide and so specific. Like if they know that you do 2D, you do After Effects, motion graphics, you have this look, you've worked with a certain amount of of agencies and brands, parang they really filter the studios and their
Mm.
capabilities. So there is always this conversation about trust. So it's really more art than science. And that happens because they really want to be able to combine a couple of things. Sometimes studios would hire a superstar talent. Like I know, like this studio, like I won't say their names, would hire a very specific director
Mm.
because they want to win this huge tech company. So there's different strategies involved. Because of the name of the director, they know they can win new business. For the pitching process naman specifically, it really is sort of a combination of your skill and if you're able to gain the vision of the agency and the client. Because it's such a big industry here that agencies have the luxury of going to different studios and asking them to come up with a look that would fit them. But it's more than
Mm.
just the art, right? It's also probably the relationship of the producer with the broadcast producer, meaning the studio's producer with the agency's producer. There's also, oh, maybe they can do it. They're more flexible with their schedule. Maybe they can deliver it at certain quality at a certain cost. So the pitching process, it's nerve wracking, but at the same time, it comes with practice. You kind of just understand that it's an honor to be in the same calls as
Mm.
like these amazing studios, but at the same time you kind of just let the pressure wash over you and realize there's work to be done. um, and it's always like a psychological test. Like after that, you've put your heart into it, you're going after business with 20 years plus studios whose works you admire. So you kind of have to really take in all of that and understand na you are enough even though you haven't won this, because it really is, it's not just about an award, right? It's about
Mm.
sustaining your business. So I guess it makes it really hard to a degree, because you're being judged on your ability, but not just one ability but multiple abilities. And at the same time, for me and Nico, since we're business owners, that also defines our longevity and our economic success as a group.
Mm. So do you still pitch for projects right now?
Absolutely, we are on one right now.
I
Yeah.
mean, that's interesting. I thought when you pitch, you have to be in the same room with the client. So it just happens over the phone. Okay.
Nico, you're mute. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
So that really depends. A lot of times, I guess it's just the way that things are kind of done here in New York, or even if we have a client, let's say in Chicago or something, we kind of just do it over the phone. But which is very different if you're used to how it is in the Philippines, where again, which we still do now there, where every time you pitch, it has to be, in front of them at their specific time. Um, Either that or you have to pick them up and bring them to your office. So there's a lot of like, it's so interesting because once you get used to this other process where you can actually just walk them through over the phone and not worry about like, which also is challenging because you're not seeing you're not seeing
Mm.
body gestures. You don't know if like they cringe at something that you said. So it's a different way of really presenting. Like you're huddling over like that you know uh, conference phone, you're trying to hear like, are they whispering, that kind of as you're talking. So and I think the only time you really go to like in person, like we do it when we have a direct client. So again, I think that's where the big difference is when you go
Mm.
direct client. I mean, there's no agency in between. When we do that, get those calls from like a client where there's no agency in between, like we do physically go there because we do want to, I guess, service the client in a different way.
Yeah, it's part of like the way. I think I don't know if that's a Filipino thing or if that's just like a Nico and Katu thing. But if we have direct clients, we like being there for them. We like extending that kind of Filipino culture to them, where we bring them snacks. Americans don't do
Mm.
that. We bring them snacks, and we really get to know them and introduce ourselves and kind of show more of our personality. So luckily, we've been able to work on a couple of projects and we're able to connect to them. And that's always been really important to us, ni Nico, kasi it's super important for us to have these relationships that go beyond the deliverable of like design. Because I think at the core of it, at the end of the day, I think we know how important it is to work together as a team. And that physical presence really creates a different impression on the clients.
Mm. Okay. So that's very interesting. My next question is, what's the difference between the motion design scene or community in New York and in Manila or in the Philippines as a whole? And if you think there's something we could improve, what are those aspects that we could improve upon?
I think for me, what I've noticed in New York is that there's a lot of schools, and there's like,
Mm.
so which means there's already a network of alumni and current students and teachers who are already who have already created a community. next is there is an actual freelance industry that's very robust, that is very profitable, and that is very much in demand. And then you also have festivals, and then you also have mentor committees, mentoring groups. So it's an ecosystem that is thriving because the industry is there, and meaning the industry, the advertising industry is there, and that industry respects and understands the process of motion design. um,
Mm.
so that's like one of the things that's my impression of the scene in New York. Nico, you want to handle the second part,
There's a second part.
like the
Uh,
Manila? How is it in Manila?
oh, well, I, I mean, I'm gonna just, um, I would say I agree with Katu. But I think that the main thing that I'm seeing is really, because if you talk about just artists and people, it's the same. You have a bunch of people who want to like, come together, become a community, and like celebrate arts and design. I think both have it, right? I
Mm.
think the big difference is just like this is New York, so sometimes you get people from like London coming by that can do a talk and things like that, where it's harder for Manila to get that, and you pretty much you have Graphica Manila to thank for being able to like get all these other people from
Mm.
different parts of the world to really share their knowledge and share their experiences, with Filipinos, which is great. Um, but so I think accessibility is a big difference. It's just because of
Mm.
our geography and just where we are. I think that's a big thing. But another big thing I at least what I feel is this ecosystem where the schools are connected with the studios themselves, so you really have that industry. So, and usually the schools that have that connection, the teachers are also working for those studios. So it's not like you get, let's say, some professor who just teaches it like in theory, but doesn't really work in any of those studios or has done freelance once in a while and then teaches. Most of the
Mm.
teachers, like in the more well-known schools, are actually people that work in those studios, whether it's, you work for Nathan, or if you work for DreamWorks, etc., or Sony, like those guys are also working.
Mm.
So you get really firsthand of what those studios need in terms of skills, and the school knows that as well. So there's this, big, like, the teachers are teaching what the industry needs, and then the schools also help to support that, either by having meets with the owners and understanding what the industry is looking for, and then tweaking the curriculum to make sure it fits the need. So there's that communication. And of course, all that will include, like, there's an understanding of cost, and an industry that understands, if you're a professional freelancer, what does that mean? You know,
Mm.
and the motion design and VFX world really works on day rates over here. And there's a whole process here called holds, which I won't get into because it's a
Mm.
little long and it could be complicated. But there's a holding system here, and it's really about trust, and it's about honoring the fact that, let's say, I'm promising you that I will work for you for X amount of hours or X amount of days, next week. Like you're giving a hold, because we all pitch, and sometimes you
Mm.
want to get a team together before you win the pitch. So you try to gather all the people you want to work with, and you ask them, can you hold your schedule? Like, don't book anything else, because I want to book you for next week. So there's a whole booking system that exists
Mm.
here. So that's what's I feel very missing, like really missing in Manila. This, like a freelance industry, which also supports the creative industry,
Mm.
um, as opposed to think of things as rackets, right? Na parang there's no standard, there's no understanding. Oh no, ibabulk ko na lang yung cost ko. Basta ito yung package cost. Basta lang makuha ko tong gusto kong net. That's it. Like ganun yung usapan. And the way that we look at value here is also very different. Kasi dito, when you cost yourself, you're costing with the understanding that taxes will be taken away from you. So that means that that number that you mention is actually your full value, and then things are going to be taken away for your insurance. Things going to be taken away for your taxes. But the thing is, those are your contributions. So that's still part of you. I think as a Pilipinas, it's more like, ano yung ibubulsa ko? Like, what am I going to put in my pocket is my cost, is my worth. But in
Mm.
reality, if you work for different companies, they need to pay other things. Like they have to pay for your taxes, they have to pay for this. So if you just say net, that means they have to add more money to cover certain things, to things to become legal and legit. So that means your value is actually higher than what you're saying. So there's those things like that it's not understood of like net versus gross. People get confused about what that means.
Mm,
um so I think that's one of the, again, I think in industry standard is the big difference. Na wala pa tayo dun.
mm. Okay. So I only have 10
Does that
more
make sense?
minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
do you agree
yeah,
with that, or?
yeah. I agree with it. Actually, I have I have a lot of follow up questions with that. But I'd like to proceed with the next
Sure.
question because we only
Yeah.
have 10 more minutes. So
Sige,
my
sige.
next question would involve around COVID. So I mean, what happened with your studio when COVID hit, and what was your response
Sure.
towards that? Yeah.
Oh no. Yeah, gladly to share. We actually, even before the whole lockdown happened, we were already prepping for it. We were actually
Mm,
doing tests a week or two before. Hey, let's test out half of the studio working at home, just so that we can start to slowly get things moving. And then as we were doing those, like a week or two later, biglang hit yung ECQ. So we're like, oh great.
mm.
At least we were already thinking about it. So meaning, like, we already,
Mm,
that was already in our heads. We already had actually half of the studio working at home,
mm,
and then they were going to switch. So they're going to like switch off, first week this half, second week that half. So and because of COVID, even now it's funny because that's, we have a shared space, and that's a big concern, is people's health.
mm,
So currently we are not making anybody go back to the office. It is not mandatory to go back. We are taking all the steps to really think of this as, what it's going to be in the future, and until there's a vaccine. That's just the
mm,
reality of it. Because the biggest problem about this virus is you don't know. One is, if you have, first of all, we don't even know if you have it because you need to get tested. And that's the
mm,
hardest part, is getting tested. In some places, they don't want to test a lot of people, although you really should. Here in New York, it is required that at least for a full office to come in, everyone in that office needs to get tested.
mm,
So we're really going by the rules of like the CDC and their recommendations. But our basic thing is that if there's no vaccine, it doesn't make sense to go back to the office to make it mandatory. People can go if they want to, just have to take care if they need to get something, or spend a day there if they want. But at the same time, we have some protocols in place, including whatever was suggested by CDC. But
mm,
definitely, like, you need to call the general manager first, let them know that you are going in. There are procedures as you walk in, and we can't have more than X amount of people in the office. So there's those things that we're implementing in terms of that. But we've been talking to the team for a long time about we have to be working remote, and then we need to figure out. And the hard part of that is, if you're a company, you're trying to create a culture. Now that if this becomes the reality, our company is even going to be hiring staff as opposed to just freelancers, at
mm,
this point.
mm.
So that's kind of what we did and where we are. It's really about remote work, and it's about people's safety. We're not making it mandatory for anyone to go to the office.
Mm.
I think we've
Okay.
also instilled with everyone a sense that we can't go back to the past, that they just really have to
Mm,
grieve and say goodbye to the way that things were. There's so many things that are changing in terms of the demand in the industry, in terms of how are you going to build these relationships, even the idea, are we still going to have a physical office in the future? Because that is an expense that's going to really
mm,
tie down and needs to reflect the slowed down overall global economic growth. So there's a lot of things that we instill in our team. We to like understand we can't look back. We have to look forward. That's one of the attitude changes that we want to instill with them. Second is that we have monthly meetings where Nico and I update the company of like where are we financially, how are the projects
mm,
how's the morale. So there's a lot of getting everyone up to speed, especially in a time where leadership seems to be very slow and globally. I mean, so
mm,
for us in Nico, the leadership is really important to show and um, and tell the hard things to the team. Like, don't be like optimistic about the wrong things. So that's been like a really difficult process. There's a lot of challenges, but at the same time, there's also like a lot of things that you have to be smart about the way you move
Mm.
forward. So Nico and I always check on each other, and we over communicate because we have to, because
Mm.
your physical distance is not helping. So we definitely have changed the way we work. I personally feel, and maybe Nico also feels, like we feel closer to the team, even though we're physically and socially distanced, because there's just a lot of things that you need to communicate now. You can't just go over a person's desk.
Mm. So moving forward, what do you think those challenges are, and how do you plan for it? What's the game plan to tackle those challenges?
Well, I think looking in the future, the way you want to tackle it is, of course, first you have to check out your company. If you are we discussing about in terms of a company or just an individual artist or something?
F-
But if we're talking about as a company,
mm,
I would say, kind of like what we did. First thing is we really had to check our cash flow stuff. First
mm,
thing you want to check out. I think for the past 2 months since March, all we were looking at was spreadsheets and like checking out, bids and awards, and then seeing the expenses, and then imagining the worst case scenario, and then really trying to figure out, okay, do I really need these things? Do I need, it's really about your expenses. It's like you really need to check that out, and even on a personal level, right? For your home, for you to live, you really need to check out your finances, because number one, you don't know about work coming back. You don't even know if certain projects are going to come back.
mm,
um so that's the real big issue, right? So that's the first thing. And then knowing and seeing how far you can get. Let's say if you can get up to September, and then from there, then your plan is, I need to think about how can I get to January 2021.
mm,
And that should be like the game plan, is how can I survive up to that point, and always be advanced, and don't try to, it's not the time to think of day to day, especially if you're, if you had a company or you had savings that you were working as you were employed before, or you still are employed, but now you're just waiting, right? um,
mm,
but also for people, let's say, who are freelancing or who had a job, a staff, I would say this is the time to really either work on your reel, work on your stuff, check out what's going on in terms of freelancing or other opportunities outside. When I say out, mean not necessarily mean the country, just outside your your industry, or just outside
mm,
your bubble, right? Like, you're always stuck being just
mm,
in the office. What else is out there? Who are the players in, let's say, Manila, for example? If you're just thinking that first, you think Manila first, then maybe you think the Philippines, or say Davao muna, and just Davao, and then you spread out, and then you see, okay, who are the players in the Philippines? What are the players in the Philippines? And then from there, maybe you can go further out, and it's really about that. It's researching, so that you're also proactive in trying to figure out how to stay ahead, because you don't know when this vaccine is going to come. And then especially if you're living in the Philippines, um, it's an interesting time. I mean, you have a lot of things besides COVID. You also have issues about the freedom of the press
mm,
happening, um, and there's lots of stuff. At some point, maybe the things that you say or the things that you draw, the things that you make, may not be possible to do anymore. That's the worst case scenario, but that's also in the back of, on your back of your
mm.
head, as you're trying to figure out how to live.
Okay. I'm just going to explain what cash flow is for those who don't
Oh,
understand. So
sure. Yeah, yeah.
basically,
Sorry.
basically it's just income minus your expenses is that's your cash flow. So either you have a positive cash flow or a negative. So that's how you compute those things. So we ran out of
Yeah,
time. So I think we'll end with that. Any last words from you guys?
sure. Yeah. Let me just hold on. Let me just help you out, just to explain that cash flow in clear. So
Mm,
what Marvin said was exactly right. It's your in and out, so income minus yung expenses mo, like your whatever rent, etc. But you do that for the whole year. So you do it from like January, February, March until, and everything in the future is like, alam mo, kung may sweldo ka, ilalagay mo doon, yun ang income. Tapos yung expenses mo, let's say, for example, you pay monthly bills, you ilalatag mo yun for the whole year. And then you can see how much money you're actually making. There's a process, so you can see by the end of the year kung may pera ka pa o wala. So that's cash flow.
mm. Okay.
that's my
Yeah.
that's my last that's my last
Yeah.
word, cash flow.
I I think for us, now is like a really challenging time for creatives who, um, who rely on like a robust economy. So, like Nico said, take this time to really do an inventory of your skills, put yourself out there, really think about the value that you create for others as opposed to the value that you want for yourself. This is also a time of, it's a paradox. You have to be very bold. You have to be super focused and hyper aware of how you want to be presented, but you should also be sensitive to the fact that there's a lot of economic distress. And because of that economic distress, there's also a lot of mental and psychological distress. So you really have to be able to take each opportunity to present your work and to present yourself to reflect that moment. It's a very challenging time for everyone. Luckily, as creatives, we are gifted with a sense of imagining a future for ourselves.
Mm.
That's really our gift, to be able to see something that's not real. So I think one of the things that I keep telling myself is, this is, as an artist, imagine the future for yourself because you have the skills to do it. And then this is also a great time to like tune into so many talks, so many online conferences that were never even possible before. Like Annecy is for the
Mm.
first time available for everyone for like what, $15, which is cheaper than a ticket to France.
Hmm.
It's amazing. So there's so many things, so many artists like you, like us, like we're showing how we do things. Take advantage of the moment. I know it's really, really mentally difficult, and for some people, it's also financially difficult. But the thing is, like, if you reach out to a resource, they will probably give you probably help you out. So this is a really special time, but you have to be really attuned and hyper focused on what you want to achieve.
Okay. Wait, just last question. You could just answer with yes or no. I mean, have you tried going to or submitting your work to festivals like Annecy before?
I think for next year we will.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but last this year we're not there yet. But
Hmm.
there are big plans for it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So I
How
think
about you guys?
we're planning. we we're always just planning. But yeah, that's a point of interest for us to join festivals like Annecy. Um, I think we'll start with anima. How do you pronounce that?
Animahinasyon. I know,
Yeah,
animahinasyon. Yeah.
yeah. I think we'll start with that and then go with uh, leveling up along the way. Yeah.
Same. I hear you. Same.
So I
And if
think
you're
we
on mute, you're on mute. Sorry, this has just been a conversation. 15% of it is you're on mute.
Say, sorry, I didn't even know if I was saying anything. I think I was just agreeing with you guys. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the invite. I think
Yes,
this has been
thank
great
you.
because we're always willing to share, and I think it's it's good that you guys are also doing this. And again, it's about building this community. And as you
Mm,
mentioned before, we need, this is the time to like, I would, I think in the past couple of weeks I was thinking, forget about fixing what you think is wrong or what could be better in the Philippines or in the industry. I just say let's just start something new. It's much easier. you know,
mm,
diba? Like it's
yeah,
so much
yeah.
better to buy something new than trying to fix a TV,
Fix
right?
it.
Just buy it new. So I think that's what we should be thinking as a group, as an industry, is really, let's
Mm,
do something new in terms of creating a new industry. And then who knows? Because it is going to be different. It's a global industry now, eh? And that's what I
mm,
was telling people. That's why we really need to like teach and show people how you should be as a freelancer, as an artist, when you're working remotely. You don't have that personal touch. Someone can't just tap you in the back anymore, be like, hey, pwede pa ayos yan, right?
mm.
So
Okay.
how do you still have that but remote? And then now that no one really knows who you are, really sometimes you're just an avatar, and how can you still be professional at the same time?
Mm,
That's something
okay.
that I think we need.
There are still, I mean, a lot of things I really want to discuss, but I think we
I know.
could do that. Yeah, I think we could do that.
May
We
part
could do
two. May
this.
part two pa
Yeah, part
tayo.
two.
Yeah. Oh.
uh, I want to discuss more about how do we build that new motion design community here? How do we how do we build from scratch here in the Philippines? And I
I
think we
think
could
it's
we
yeah.
could
I was gonna answer, but this is not the time. But
yeah.
I would say community organizing is the answer.
Yeah. The part two, we can do that in part
Part
two.
two. Part two.
Yeah, yeah.
Stay
Part two.
tuned.
There's going to be a part two of this. So thank you
Ano,
very much
dami, no?
for
Oh,
thank you very much for accepting the invite. I had fun listening to you guys. It was very insightful. This video call is also a notes for me as much as this is valuable to the viewer. I'm going to replay this and update my notes. And yeah, this is very this is very helpful. Very helpful.
no problem. We learn a
Amazing.
lot from you guys as well. So
Yes. Definitely. Our pleasure.
So I hope you enjoyed this episode and I hope you learned a lot from this. And if you're interested in seeing a part two of this, where Nico, Katu, and I are going to talk about how to build a creative community from scratch, given our situation, the lockdown and all, please let us know in the comments and we'll make it happen. And I'll also link everything in the descriptions below, Resonate's website. And also, Resonate is starting this creative community called Creative Brief, where they interview also other entrepreneur. And I'll also link it in the description. If you like this video and if you like to continue making this video, I would appreciate it if you give us a thumbs up or comment or subscribe. Thank you, and I hope to see you next time.